There we go. So this is how to connect with prospective clients, referral partners, and strategic partners using a B2B podcast. And I'll give a little bit of background about myself as well. And Kim from Cape Town. Awesome. Beautiful. I hear that's a beautiful place. Never been there, unfortunately. And if you want to grab the slides, you can go to rise25.com/webinar tools or scan that QR code. I'll leave it up for a second. And you can also you'll get our podcast tools, equipment, and cheat sheet, tools and equipment cheat sheet, because that's always the number one question I get is what microphone should I buy and what software should I use? People love to talk about that stuff. I'm going to be talking a little bit about that during the presentation here. So let's start with this. So first of all, how would it work if you were to reach out to your network, maybe your clients, and say, hey, November's looking a little light. We don't have that much work coming in right now. Do you mind introducing me to some of your friends and clients? I'd just love to, talk to them, hop on a call with them, talk a little bit about our services, how we can help them, how we can provide services to them. That probably wouldn't work that well, right? It's looks of a smack of a little bit of desperation, right? Now, let's try a different approach. Let's say, what if you were to reach out and you were to say something like this? Hey, we're actually featuring top CEOs of B2B SaaS companies in San Francisco, and we've already featured a few of your competitors like this one and this one and this one. Would you like to be included? It's a little bit more of a velvet rope type of strategy, and it is far more effective than just asking for referrals. I'm kind of my pet peeve is when people say, "Oh, just ask for referrals." People don't want to be thrown into a sales conversation if they can avoid it, and if they don't feel like they are ready to buy right then. People just don't like that sort of thing. Whereas using the podcast for your approach can get you into conversations. So what we discovered is that this was a way, using podcasts, to control your destiny. And we could get referrals by employing this strategy on a regular basis. So I'll give you an example. So, my business partner and we do a ton of podcasts, and welcome, John. So you're here. Welcome. Love to know where you're dialing in from, what part of the globe. A little while back, my business partner did an interview with a successful SaaS founder. And after that interview happened, he asked him, hey, I'd love any other guest recommendations you have. And he sent him this list, including a few of the companies that were multi-billion-dollar companies. So this was a guest who said, I will give you introductions to all these people. And he sent him a list of 27 companies that he was open to making an introduction to. Now, imagine trying to get that if you were to reach out to people and just say, can you introduce me to people for the purpose of a referral, or so I can talk about my services? You'd never get that kind of response, right? But when you do it for the purpose of the podcast, it's far more effective. I see John's in Connecticut. Awesome. Thanks, John. Good to see you here. So what we discovered through this process is that this can become a more predictable system for getting incoming referrals. It can help you to connect to high caliber potential clients, and also really help you to build a bigger reputation in your field, in your industry, in the vertical that you want to be known in. So you've probably heard this saying, it's not what you know, but who you know. Well, we prefer a slightly different twist on that. It's not what you know or who you know, but how you grow your network. That's what we're going to lay out for you here to explain how you can grow the connections and the people that you know. And so what we're going to do in the course of this presentation for the next 45 minutes or so is I'm going to show you how to connect to your Dream 200 referral, your ideal clients and referral partners. I will share a system for giving to your network that will bring you lots of incoming referrals. And I will also share with you how you can get ROI immediately from this presentation through some actions that you can take here today. So as far as the agenda goes, I'll give you a little background about myself so you know who I am and where I'm coming from. We'll talk about why the way that most people think about podcasting is all wrong. We'll talk about some of the biggest misconceptions about podcasting. We'll talk about the 5-step process, how you build relationships with prospective clients, referral partners, and strategic partners using a B2B podcast. And then we'll talk about our podcasting to referrals blueprint, give you some real world case studies and examples so that this becomes more practical for you. And then finally, we'll do Q&A at the end. And Kim and John, since you're live on here, I'd love to know if you guys have podcasts already. And if so, who you focus on through the podcast. All right, a little bit of background about me. So this is me. I've got 4 kids. So I mean, as you can imagine, pretty busy in our household. My background, a little bit unusual. I was a writer in presidential letters and messages in the Clinton years, and then I was a speechwriter for Governor of California. Then went back to law school. I've worked for DreamWorks at various different times, Forbes. I've been an attorney in Silicon Valley, serving startups in Silicon Valley. I started my podcast, the Smart Business Revolution podcast, back in 2010 as an extension of my legal practice. So I just started organically interviewing my clients. And when I did that, I found it turned into more clients and more clients and referrals and strategic partners. And it was an amazing tool for up-leveling my network and meeting incredible people. So I've been doing it ever since. And our podcast our podcast company, Rise 25, through which we help B2B businesses to start podcasts, came not because it was the company that we decided to build, but rather because it was a reaction to what other people were asking us for. Awesome. Kim is starting her first podcast on Friday. That's very cool. And John, not yet. Hopefully by the end of this, you will be convinced that you need to do it. Jeremy, my business partner, is a member of EO Chicago. He started a number of different companies before we started Rise 25 together. And he started his podcast actually back in 2008 and has published 2 plus episodes per week for 17 plus years. In fact, the funny thing is we started our business together, and I looked at him and I realized I was doing such a poorer job than him. There was one year where we were business partners and I didn't publish a single episode because I was stuck in the production process myself, stuck in the weeds on it. And I looked at him at the end of that year and I was like, you got to help me. You're putting out consistent episodes. I'm not. What am I doing wrong? He helped me revamp my process. And the next year I put out 52 episodes, 1 per week. And it was far more effective and, frankly, less time consuming doing it that way. And so that's a little bit of background about him. And so this is the 5-step process that we're going to go over. And I'm going to break down each of these, but just giving you an overview is number one, what you want to do first, you want to create what we call your Dream 200, which is your list of your clients, referral partners, strategic partners, centers of influence, authors, speakers, in your industry, the people that you want to build your network in that direction and double down your relationships with those sorts of people. Number 2, you want to get ROI with outreach, because actually the process of reaching out, Kim, maybe you've seen this already in the outreach that you've done, but the process of reaching out to people for the purpose of the podcast is tremendously valuable. It can get you into conversation with people you want to get into conversation with. Third, we're going to talk about the art and science of producing amazing content. So how, people wonder this all the time. Well, how do I make something that's worth listening to? We're going to talk about that, and also some of the technology questions, tools, and software. Fourth, we're going to talk about how to build your give loop and grow your reach. So when you're publishing episodes, how do you make that effort and that energy go even further? Excuse me. And then finally, last piece is how to turn your podcast into profits. So turning guests into partners, referral partners, strategic partners, clients, and that sort of thing. This is the number one thing that we have done in our personal lives, in our professional lives. It has been an incredible tool for building relationships with an array of companies. And these are companies that we've partnered with in some way. Some of them were sponsors for companies, sponsors for events that we hosted. Some of them have been clients of ours. Some of them we've collaborated in various different ways. But you don't need industry connections. You don't need an audience. You don't need to be well known in your field in order to employ this strategy. In fact, we even landed a project with a publicly traded company at one of their 17,000 person conferences. They built this booth. They paid us to do it because of our podcasts. And so we were sitting there and we were basically being paid very well to do lead generation, because we ended up getting a division of Berkshire Hathaway as a client because of this project. So we're being viewed as the thought leaders, the experts, and we are also getting access to people that we wouldn't otherwise get access to. And speaking of that, I had the co-founder of Netflix, one of the biggest companies of our day today, came onto my podcast, and I had a great conversation with him. But it's not just about famous people or famous companies. In fact, one of the most valuable podcasts we've done in recent years was I interviewed a guy named Jason Swank. He also has a podcast, and he's an agency leader. And this kind of came about because we were thinking about, who do we know in our network, but we don't know well enough, and we want to get to know better. And so it was during COVID, and he had been to one of our events before, but we didn't really know him that well. But we enjoyed serving other agencies as far as a clientele goes. And so we thought, well, let's have Jason on the podcast. And I had Jason on the podcast, and he since has become an amazing advocate, collaborator, referral partner. We've paid money to him. We pay money to him regularly. He pays money to us. There's various different, it's just a great, real rich collaboration, which is an ideal type of scenario. Here's another one. So this is the co-founder of Pixar. Now, Jeremy interviewed him, got access to him, and actually brought one of our favorite clients, Dr. Scott Gray, who's a huge fan of Disney, everything Disney does, Pixar, and had him on the podcast. So you can imagine what that does if you have one of your key clients who has a passion for something, and you give them access to something that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. Those types of clients are really they're fans and advocates for life. But a podcast, you need to understand, is like a Swiss Army knife, is a tool that can do many things at once. So many people think it is a marketing tool. Full stop. That's all they think. It's a marketing tool. But it isn't. It's actually so much more than that. It can do so many different things. And we didn't invent this strategy. Many successful people have utilized this strategy. In fact, you've probably heard of this person. This was a little girl born into poverty, rural Mississippi. She had a teenage single mother, later raised in an inner city. She was raped at age 9, became pregnant at 14. Her son died in infancy. She landed a job in radio while still in high school and began co-anchoring the local evening news at the age of 19. What she did is she featured others with interviews and used that strategy to climb to the top of her industry. And of course, I'm talking about Oprah Winfrey, one of the biggest media personalities and amazing entrepreneurs of her day. So this is really a tool that you can use to level up your network and form relationships to get more referrals. And of course, Oprah Winfrey's not the only one doing this these days. These days, billionaires and founders of multi-billion-dollar companies are doing it. And so if it's going to work for them, it will work for you. And so some of the biggest business deals that have unfolded in recent years, if you really look under the surface, you'll see that there were conversations that are happening between business leaders, and podcasts are oftentimes at the center of those conversations. But most people think that podcasting is all wrong. They think, I just need to answer these questions like, oh, what microphone should I buy? I'm going to spend 10 hours researching what microphone I should buy. And I just need to figure out how I'm going to get downloads and subscribers. And I just need to figure out how to get sponsors, or I don't know, I can't do this because how will I get people to say yes to be a guest? These are all questions that people oftentimes fixate on. They have paralysis analysis over them. But the truth is that, most people focus on that. They spend 1% of their time thinking about who is the person on the other end of the microphone. Now, what we believe is that those things are not important. In fact, the number one reason that people fail or they quit at doing a podcast is it's not because of poor audio quality in their microphone. It's not because they couldn't get enough downloads. It's not because they couldn't get guests to say yes to an interview. The number one reason that people stop podcasting is because they can't figure out how to get good ROI from the initiative. So what we do is we make sure that when you focus on starting a podcast, you spend 1% of your time on those inconsequential questions. You spend 99% of your time focus on this much more foundational question, which is, who are the people that make up our Dream 200 that we are going to feature through the podcast? And how are we going to use the podcast in order to build and deepen relationship with those people on that list? So really, the key to podcasting successfully, it's focus on getting ROI with your podcast. If you get ROI with your podcast, then you will prioritize it. You will make time for it. You won't be just one of these busy people who doesn't have time for it. You will realize that this is the core of your business development. This is the center of your network building initiative. So then naturally that leads to the next question, which is, how do you get ROI? Well, the answer is you focus on the highest and best use of your time, using the podcast to build relationships, and you delegate everything else. You get everything else out of your way, off of your plate, because those things will drain energy from you. They will drain your time, and you will judge the entire initiative to be a waste of time. And so it is really critically important that you do that. All right, so let's break it down. We're going to go through the 5 main parts to getting ROI, getting referrals, getting clients using a podcast. I already went through these 5 through you. First is to create your Dream 200. Now, we like to think of this in terms of what we call the ROI method. So the first step is building your foundation, taking the time to build out the list of the 200. Then you go from there to reaching out to them. We'll get to that in a second. So let's start with this. Who is the ideal targeting for clients and referral partners? Like, who are the best clients? Who are your best referral partners? Another way to think about it is your champions. Who are the people that are already raving about you? Not counting clients, current clients, because that's kind of a separate, different category. But who are your champions? Are there other consultants? Are there other professionals? It could be another. It could even be a competitor. But there are people that rave about you and tell other people about you. Now, when it comes to building a list of your Dream 200, the people that you want to feature on the podcast, a lot of times people jump straight to talking and thinking about cold relationships instead of warm relationships. Now, a warm relationship is someone that already knows you, likes you, trusts you. Those are warm relationships. Clients, referral partners, friends, peers, that sort of thing. Cold relationships is anyone that doesn't know you. You've never met them before. They don't know you. They don't trust you yet. They don't like you yet. And so you actually have a further journey in terms of the cold relationship. So a lot of times people skip over the warm relationships, even though you've already put in a lot of work to build relationships with those people. So really a better focus is to focus on those warm relationships first and to make that list of the people who already know, like, and trust you. And so once you've done that, then you can move on to talking about cold relationships. Now, cold relationships, let's talk about that. Where can you find great referral partners or strategic partners that are not already a referral partner of you? Well, here's some of the common trends. So you might look at like consultants or practice management groups or advisors or things like that in the industry that you want to serve. You might look at trade associations in your industry that are comprised of other members of your ICP, or ideal client profile. You might look at people who run conferences in your niche. Those are oftentimes thought leaders, experts. They are oftentimes the people that are bringing people together that are really well networked and connected in your industry. You might ask your best customers what software, what services they use, because that software, those services are targeting the same types of clientele as you are, but providing a different service. You might look at speakers and authors who are speaking in your industry. Those are all common trends for great sources of cold relationships. Okay, so let's look at a case study and a few examples of how this could work for you. I'll give you an example of Dean Dutro, CEO of an agency business. And when he came to us, they were entering a new market and a niche. They had a longer sales cycle than they wanted, so they wanted to see if they could shorten that down. And they wanted to increase their authority in the market, and they wanted to increase growth. And so we helped them to launch the Relationship Commerce podcast, which was their podcast for getting into those conversations with the prospects. And what happened? Well, he said in his words, he said, I could attribute $50,000 to $75,000 in MRR directly to the podcast from closing clients who are guests. Clients who were guests on the podcast typically would close at a much higher rate. Why is that? That is because it was an opportunity for him to get into conversation with them, build trust, build authority, inform them, educate them about what he does, and get to know what their pain points were. So if we were to go to Dean's Dream 200 and give you some examples here of what sorts of people would be on that list. So he did e-commerce consulting. And so Shopify consultants or practice management groups are good examples. E-commerce associations, because that's the types of members of that association. E-commerce conferences, so looking especially at speakers or exhibitors at those conferences. Another thing you can do is just ask your best customers what software and services they use, i.e., Shopify plugins are a great referral source, and then also e-commerce speakers and authors. So these are all the types of people that Dean was really focused on interviewing. All right, let's go to another example. This is Samir Balwani, is actually an EO New Jersey member. His company is Query. And in his case, he didn't have a refined business development process. He wanted a business development process. He wasn't connecting with his top prospects, didn't have a steady pipeline, didn't have a clear understanding of what his buyers wanted from him. And so we launched actually two separate podcasts with him, and he started interviewing people on the podcast. And a couple of things that I really want to point out here is that he didn't overthink it. He didn't, no paralysis analysis. He proceeded forward, treated it like a business development pipeline, interviewing prospects, interviewing referral partners, and a couple of different things. Keep it simple, stupid. He asked the same 7 questions on each episode. I've seen this work before. It doesn't work for everyone, but some people just keeping it totally simple like that is it works really well. He did 38 published episodes in his first 12 months. From that, he closed 5 clients. Each of his clients were worth about $180,000 to $200,000. So that's about $1 million in new revenue to his business. And the crazy part about this typical entrepreneur is that the reason he and I were talking a year into the podcast was because he wanted to change up a bunch of things. And I had to like reach through the Zoom and say, Samir, what are you doing? This is working really well. And so sometimes the hardest thing about this is that you got to keep on doing it. It is running a marathon rather than just, a sprint or something like that. And so he hadn't even realized, the impact that it was really very consistent and then he could keep on doing it. So I had to talk him out of changing the format. All right, next case study. So this is Craig Weiss. He is the CEO of Retainer Club. They are in dental industry services. There's also a book that he had written as well. And now his issue was he wasn't connecting with top orthodontists. He wanted to explain a new innovative new model to dental and orthodontist influencers. Yes, that is a thing. But the challenge was, it doesn't work that well to reach out to your network and say, hey, I've got a better mousetrap. I know you're busy. Can you, take some time out of your schedule for me to explain to you that better mousetrap? A lot of times people are like, my mousetrap's fine. I don't need to a new model or anything like that. So just getting that opening, that foot in the door in order to have that conversation is really challenging. So what do? We launched the In Your Face podcast for them. And before we look at the results, I want to break down who they targeted and why, because I think this is illustrative for all of you. So we talked about it a little bit earlier, who is your ideal client, who are your ideal referral partners. We talked about consultants. We talked about practice management groups, trade associations, people who run conferences, software and services, authors and influencers. Those are some general categories. So, if we use an example here, just to make this kind of practical. So let's say we have a financial advisor specializing in helping dentists. Some of the types of referral partners for someone like that would be dental consultants, dental practice management groups, dental associations, dental conferences. Those are all good types of potential referral partners. So for you, you can do this by just writing down your top best 3 referral partners. So who are your best referral partners right now? And here's a quick little hack. I did this for quite a while. When I was an attorney practicing law, I would write down every client that came in and write down their name on a piece of paper on the wall. Eventually, I had to add more pieces of paper. I'd write down their name. I'd write how much they paid. And then I'd write down who referred them to me, what source they came from. And then over time, this list would get longer and longer and longer over time. And then I would go back and I would circle names that appeared more than once. And it was a very easy way to visually look and see who my best referral partners were. But then I also look back and I realized, this person had referred a bunch of clients to me, but then they haven't referred anyone to me in a year. So then that's good information to know. I should go back. I should double down on that person. I should reach out to that person. I should, check in with them. And so that's a good thing that you can do as well. So if you don't know who your best referral partners are. All right. Number 2 is how to get ROI with outreach. We're going to focus on that. And we're kind of in the second section of the ROI method here. So how do you get ROI before you launch? Well, you can use the indirect ask. What is the indirect ask? The indirect ask is a message that you send to get referrals or more guests from your network. And why is this one of the most powerful things you can do? Well, you can get really high caliber referrals from your network even before you are doing any interviews. And so that's really the power here is by reaching out to your network and just saying, hey, we're doing this podcast. These are kind of the criteria around it. We're looking for people, who can be on the show. Who would you recommend would be a good fit for it? It's just kind of the way that you can do it. So, and this is like a horrible way of doing it. This is really bad, outreach message that I got, but I would share it with you anyways, it's just to see how not to do it. So, amidst the circumstances that are occurring, we would like to reach out and let you know we are available for any needs upcoming you or your team may have. I'd like to send you some updated information regarding these services. Is that okay? I mean, like, why would I respond to this? It just seems miserable. So here's a much better way to craft your indirect ask. So number one, specifically list your criteria of who you want to feature, i.e. I'm looking for CEOs of B2B software companies at over 200 staff. Include social proof elements. This is really critically important. So your years of experience in the industry, your respective companies you've done work for, that sort of thing. Let's put it all together. So again, going back to Craig and the dental industry services, his challenge wasn't connecting with top orthodontists, wasn't wanted to explain his innovative new model. With our guidance, he created this indirect ask, sent it out to influencers who are also potential clients. Many of them had not been responding to his cold outreach previously, but what it did is it did really well with prospects who had gone dark. And he got them onto a phone with him for the purpose, of course, for the podcast. What ended up happening is he got over $100,000 in annual recurring revenue, again, with no established audience or following or anything like that, when he landed an influencer in their space as a client. And this was, again, someone who had been completely dark, wasn't responding to outreach, but he used the podcast in order to get back into conversation with them. So that's what happened is they realized the power of having their own podcast. It's a predictable system for creating great referral partners and getting clients. And great bonus about the podcast, you can also feature your clients and get great testimonials that way. You can feature your success stories. All right. So as far as action steps, what you can do in the next 24 hours is take out your phone, find the people you wrote down on your Dream 200 or your biggest champions and email or text them, appreciate them, give to them. It could be something like, hey, I was just thinking about you, want to thank you for all your support, for always going above and beyond. What are you focused on lately? I'd love to, see how I can help you. Next action, schedule a call with them, record an episode, of course, explore their number one goal, like see how you can help that person. Ask them for guest suggestions and ask to feature them on the podcast. These are all great things that you can do with people. All right, we're moving on. Number 3, art and science of producing amazing content. So we're in the feature stage here where you feature guests on the show. So next question is, how do you produce amazing content? This is one we get all the time. How do you rock an interview? Make sure that goes well. And the answer is the power of stories. Stories are memorable. They move people into action. Your favorite movie, your favorite book, they're full of great stories. And I think that's why people like podcasts is that they like listening to people tell stories. Two people have a conversation about a story. So how do you get great stories from your guests? Well, you ask great questions that elicit great stories. So here's a few questions that you can ask that will elicit better stories from people. Number 1, how did you get started with this? Tell me what the origin story is. There's probably a story behind it. They probably told it before. Where did this idea come from is another great question to ask. Asking for specific stories or examples is a great way to get that. I did this with Mark Randolph, the co-founder of Netflix. How did you come up with the idea for Netflix? Give me 25 minutes of incredible stories. It could have been probably an hour because he really had spent a lot of time researching and trying to figure out what his business was going to be. One content mistake that we see, this is just one thing I want to highlight for you, is timeless versus timely content. I'm a big fan of creating timeless content rather than timely content. If you create timely content, like a daily podcast that's about that day's news, then you got to keep on doing it day after day. If it's a couple of days old, it's completely out of date and no one wants to listen to it. Versus if you create timeless content, that stuff stacks over time and someone could discover a podcast episode you recorded years earlier and they assume it might have been recorded yesterday. And that is much more valuable to you in terms of putting breadcrumbs out there and using it as a business development tool for you. So if you ask questions like, hey, did you watch the Super Bowl last night? Or are you watching the World Series? It immediately timestamps that episode that you created. What did you think about the new law that was just signed? Has it been hot for you too, or rainy, or whatever? All those things are kind of time stamping it, and people listen to these things and they think, "Oh, this is not very timely." They're talking about an AI, but they're saying it's really hot, but it's really cold outside right now, so I know that this must have been recorded 6 months ago. So immediately they kind of discount it, and they're not less likely to listen to it. Number four, building your give loop and growing your reach. We're over on this part of the ROI method. So, how to get referrals and ROI. Now, when you publish an episode, you are giving to that guest in a major way. Yes, even if you have a new podcast or not a lot of downloads. And so, I'll give you an example. So, this is an EO Seattle member, a client of ours, Lizzie Mintis. And, we were helping her to create these podcasts. She was sharing these episodes online. And then, I was curious about this, who had shared it? Because when you create little snippets and you share them online, especially on LinkedIn, it's very easy for people to reshare them. And if you interview people, if your network is focused on your industry and you interview people that are in your industry and they reshare it with their network, then you get other people in your industry, you get in front of them, you get visibility in all of them. So that's why I was really interested in that piece. Is why who was resharing it. And these were two of the people that reshared it. It was a guy from Gala Games and a guy from Meta. And, just going back to Lizzie, what she does is she actually is a recruiting company for people in the gaming industry. And so to have someone from Meta and someone from Gala Games who are focused on this industry sharing it, people in their industry are going to be exposed to it and they're going to see it. So what'll even happen is the people that are liking it, you look at the 29 down at the bottom there, many of those people are not first degree connections of Lizzie. So one thing you can do is then reach out, connect, send a connection message to each of those people, especially the second and third degree connections, and say something to them like, "Hey, I saw that you commented or you liked my podcast with Rich Vogel. Maybe that person looks like a good guest for the podcast also, or connection or a potential client. Invite them onto the podcast as well, or just at least engage in conversation with them. They probably would be thrilled that the host of the podcast that they, commented on, they watched the little snippet from, is reaching out. So that's a great strategy to do. And then, organically, we built up a following of our business page of 30,000 followers, our business page. And that was not even, it was just from sharing that content. So you can build another channel for yourself that way. So you should really spread the episode as far and wide as possible. And the beautiful part about it is that a podcast is one conversation and it turns into multiple different channels. This is part of the reason that I kind of laugh when people say, "I have a podcast, it's on YouTube." And I'm like, "Well, is it anywhere else?" And they're like, "It's on YouTube." That's not a podcast. A podcast is distributed across multiple different channels. YouTube is one of those channels. And if you only distribute on one of those channels, then if that company changes the rules of the road, which they do often, then there's nothing you can do about it. And one of the advantages of a podcast is that you actually you're distributing yourself. You actually have you're putting your not all your eggs in one basket. And so that's really a good advantage to it. All right. So, outreach action here, go to the social media channel of your choice, find the people you wrote down in your Dream 200 who are your biggest champions, which we were talking about earlier, and post about them. You could put something on your LinkedIn. You can say something you liked about them. You could share their website. You could, share a book they have coming out, a podcast, something like that. Love on them, tag them in the post and anyone else that you think should see it. So that's really a way to grow your reach with the podcast and have it go a lot further. All right, last piece. How do you turn the podcast into actual profits? So turning guests into partners. Okay. So look for your give and collaboration opportunities. So after the interview, you can offer to refer someone and find out their ideal client. So I'm a big fan. I say if you want to get introductions, you need to introduce other people. So when I have someone as a guest on my show, I'm thinking about, hey, who else can I introduce them to? Because I know then that I can turn around and I can ask them who can they introduce to me for the purpose of being a guest on my podcast. Other things that you can do is, of course, message the guest when the episode goes live. Best thing to do is not keep that on your plate, but delegate it, have someone else to do it. If you see a comment on social media on the posted episode, you can let the interviewee know that you saw that. It's a great way to, again, build that relationship further. And then other things you can do is you can, have a formal referral program through your business to incentivize and be able to send a referral contract to them if they are a great referral partner. So creating your loop, it really can become a no-brainer. So let's do a hypothetical here. Let's say that if you were to only interview referral partners, and let's say, the lifetime value of a client for you is $50,000, just to use a simple round number. Well, if you were to do, let's say, 40 interviews with referral partners, and over the course of a year, so 40 interviews, you take some vacation, so you're not exactly 52, not exactly one per week. And if just 10%, I think that's kind of a conservative number, 10% were to refer just one person each of those referral partners, 4 times 50,000 is $200,000. So you can see how really valuable this can be. You can get some real massive ROI. And we've got clients that have got, a client lifetime value in the tens of millions, so you can see some tremendous ROI from this. So the two keys here are really, number one, the right strategy to identify first the names of the people on your Dream 200 and reach out to them. And then number two, delegate everything except for the time that you spend building the relationship with referral partners, with clients, using the podcast as your tool for that. You should not be spending time doing anything else, formatting RSS feeds, editing audio files, editing video files. Not a good use of your time. Far better use of your time is that relationship building process. And you should use the podcast as a tool to form impactful, valuable relationships. So if you do this right, you set yourself up for a lot of referrals and client work. So final thoughts, this is an uncertain economic time right now, and we also have AI coming down the pike, leading to some disruption. In a time of disruption, you should turn to your best relationships. You should strengthen your best relationships by delivering value to them, and always keep growing, always keep up-leveling your network. So we'll wrap it there. If you have any questions, happy to answer any questions. Or